Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, today, what happened was, you ever have one of these things where you intended to do something, but then what happened was something else? So, you know, I realized that I really wanted to check out Null Inquisitor's channel more because I watched some of his videos, and I think I explained somewhere in the past that I kind of tend to like, find a channel, binge watch the videos, that sort of thing. And so it was on my list of things to do is to check out more of his stuff because he doesn't, produce a lot of new content right now. But we've been talking, so I figured, well, why not? What happened was I go on his his channel and I find this playlist and it's on GM syndrome or GM disease. And so he's made none of the videos in it. There's 6 videos in there, and not surprising, like most video topics you find in from producers in the RPG brigade community, so to speak. They trace their roots either back to Samwise 7 RPG, Tim Harper, or Runeslinger. I'm pretty sure 90% of all topics and videos trace their roots back to something that those two have done. So this was no exception. Tim Harper had produced a video called GM Syndrome, GM Disease, and so actually in this little playlist, and I think I'll link Runeslinger's playlist down there. Is Samwise 7 does a video back from like 2011, I think. Same Old G does one in 2014. Red Dice Diaries does one. Hope I get the name right. Serko Rookman. Rogue DM, and then there's a hangouts, long hangouts with Red Dice Diaries and the Swamper, and which I admit I did not watch the entire thing yet because it's about an hour. So maybe they come to some great conclusion that I missed because I stopped watching today. I have to watch the rest of it. But cool little series and something I can relate to. Absolutely. It's the idea. Check out the original video. Tim mentions the idea that what happens is you're DM. Whether by design or accident, you end up DMing a lot of games or GMing a game. You're the default game master. You've done it a lot, and then when you finally get to go play in a game, you realize that somehow you're a little ruined. That you're not having as much fun as you used to, and you find yourself picking apart what the other game master is doing, or you just have trouble immersing yourself into your character. You can kind of see things coming before they're coming because you're just you're used to all those old little I don't want to say tricks, but just the way that game masters can sometimes frame things, just little subtle hints or cues. And it's not just talking about story driven games where the DM's going to run you down a certain area or kind of lead you in a certain direction. Oh, that's definitely part of it. That's not going to be not going to be ignorant enough to, or pretend to be ignorant enough to think that GMs never do that. But you can kind of see all those little sorts of things, and I guess the suspension of disbelief becomes hard in a case like that. So I'm just gonna chime in with my 2 cents because heck, it's my channel, so I can do what I want. And sometimes you're a player, and sometimes you're the game master, right? Right? So somebody wanted a reappearance of this thing. Someday I'll make a video with this guy, but that is a different story. But anyhow. It made me think of a couple things as I was watching the original videos and just kind of I listened to some, like I think on the drive to work and then at lunch break and all that thing. Couple stories. I worked with this guy Herb Wilson, and he was a jazz saxophonist. And he actually, it turns out, as we worked together for like a couple of years, same office. Then I realized he'd actually sat in with a band of mine when I was a kid, and it was kind of neat to remember. Oh yeah, but. It's funny, it's going to be a musical example, and then I'm watching the Rogue DM's video, and sure enough, they bring out a music example as well. And the idea is this, Herb was an accomplished musician, and one day I'm walking by the office, and he's listening to country, and okay, so Herb was African American, he was just, we'd have musical discussions and whatnot, and I want to say Herb was a musical snob. But he fit all these stereotypes of somebody that would not listen to country. And please don't throw rocks at me. I'm just I was just for a second I kind of threw had to do a double take, really. And Herb says, "Oh yeah," he goes, "It's about the only music I can listen to where I don't analyze it because it's so simple." So if you're a country music fan, or if you think I've been somehow pigeonholing Herb, that's not the point. The point is I can relate to that. When it comes to gaming sometimes, because we do, just like the Rogue DM had mentioned, as somebody with experience, and you don't have to be somebody that's always been the game master. You can just be somebody that's played a lot and has seen a lot. You start to analyze everything, or that can be kind of second nature, where you can kind of you see the fake before the other team does, so to speak. You see things coming, and so that can be a tough habit to break. Um, the other the other thing that made me think of another musician for whatever reason was probably because I play music occasionally. This guy Jim Stavros that I played with. Jim was one of the is one of the best drummers I've ever played with, and Jim was a family man. CPA, had a corporate CPA for a long time. Was busy, and it was fun. He had played on and off for most of his life. Like his dad was a drum teacher, taught most of the other people in the area that played drums, or a good percentage of the people that played drums in the area at one time or another. People knew who his father was. And so I think I have a picture of, or he had a picture of him. First gig he ever played, he was probably like 7. He had to stand up. He couldn't like sit down and reach the kick drum. Point is, I remember talking to him because he would go back and forth, sometimes playing in a band, sometimes not playing in a band. And he said, you know what? When I'm in a band, I'm wishing I wasn't, because sometimes the hours are long. It's a pain in the butt. I don't necessarily want to go to this gig. I want to go spend time with my family, etc. However, he goes, when he wasn't in a band and he wasn't playing, then he would just sit at home sometimes, like kind of feeling like he was missing it. Like he wished maybe I wish I would just had a gig this weekend, or my friends are playing that night, or and so he found out that he was kind of going to be kind of having the grass being greener on the other side. Be a little miserable on both situations, playing and not playing. But he said, you know what, I'm a little less miserable when I'm playing. So, that just made me think of being like GM and player and going back and forth, because it's been my experience when I play, or when I'm a game master, there's often that part of me that wishes I wish I could play in this game. Whatever system it is, or what. Sometimes I just think my game, the hubris, my game is that cool, or that my concept, or whatever. I wish I could play in this system. It'd be really neat. Or maybe it's just sometimes it's the way that I've just set everything up. Maybe I'm playing an OSR game. Imagine that, and I've kind of done a couple house rules or tweaked it. I'm like, yeah, this makes really a lot of sense to me. Wish I could play in that rule set, because maybe the next guy won't do it that way. However, at the same point, when I'm a player, sometimes I'm watching and I'm thinking, I would have done this differently. And I start to think, and I wish I was running this. I don't know if you ever had that happen to you, but you can't be happy whatever side of the fence you're on. Which kind of ushers in one point. I've said this before, I believe, in a video. I know I've said it to Runeslinger back and forth in conversation. I mentioned something to him today about that, and I think I suspect that a lot of the kind of like that DM syndrome happens, and perhaps DM Fiat, the people that get upset with Game Master Fiat, and Samuel G did a great response video today, as a matter of fact. But sometimes what it boils down to is I would have done it differently. Like, I'm not so much against I'm speaking from the person that's saying I don't like Game Master Fiat or whatever. It's not really Game Master Fiat that I'm against. My Fiat would have been different. I would have ruled differently in this situation. That sort of thing. And so I think sometimes as we're a game master playing in somebody else's game, you have that moment where you're like, man, I just would have done that differently. You're not picking, you're not in that situation I talked about before where you can see things coming. You're just like, yeah, I just don't agree with how they interpreted that rule, or whatever they did. However they decided to usher in a hook or a lead or whatever. You start, you're critical in that manner. It took a while for me to kind of let go when I played in the Lamentations of the Flame Princess game, because I read the rules and I was used to OSR games, period. And there were a couple things that Joe the lawyer did that I was like, I think I even asked him one time, don't you think you'd rather do it this way or whatever? And he's like, no. Well, he was a DM, so I acquiesced and kind of learned to say, let it ride. I learned to let it go, which is important. I think you really have to let stuff go. Gee, I really didn't expect for the video to be this long. Sorry. Anyhow. Yeah, let's see. What else did I want to talk about here? Actually, another thing that I thought of, as I'm talking about, or we're talking about the idea of you're kind of ruined by sitting in the GM's chair. Sometimes I think you're kind of ruined, or you have to kind of recharge yourself because you just had that much experience in role-playing games, period. It's harder to have that suspension of disbelief. It's not as, that dragon, back to chasing the dragon. that experience that you had early on, it's tougher for you to get that because you know too much. And it's funny. I listened to this recent BBC interview with Mike Mornard. Some people know him as Old Geezer on some forums, but he's 16 years old. He played in Gary Gygax's original group, and there was one part he talked about. I think it was about like things like monster manuals or whatever. But he said he even said, and some people would cringe with this. I know Samuel G would cringe because we didn't even know all the rules as players. I don't think I'd want to go that far, but we didn't even know the rules. But he goes, there was no monster manual. Like when we encountered something for the first time, or a situation, or perhaps somebody had a magic item, or we encountered an enemy wizard, with it's using some kind of spell. We had no idea what it was. I can't, So I remember listening and thinking, man, I envy that experience. When you plain old didn't know. Because now I remember I did DM'd a game. Where I had one player that was just two of them actually were so experienced and so good. They were just calling what I was doing, and that's that. And I don't know if I was tipping my hand too much or just whether they were that good. It was probably 50-50. I don't know. But sometimes that mystery, when you've looked under the hood a lot, maybe you've played a lot as a player, but maybe you've been a game master and you've seen under the hood of these games. You've seen under the hood of just running sessions, and you kind of know how stuff works. So that can be tough. So I can empathize with Tim and others for sure. That it takes a little bit of work. It's my experience. I don't have all the answers. I think Swampert had a lot of answers, but I don't have all the answers. But I tell you, I try to just sit back, relax, let it go. Realize that just accept the fact that the game master is not going to run things the way I would have. They're going to make rulings that I would have made differently. They may I don't know, house rule something differently. They may just just to have the action go a little bit differently. They may their methods may be different. As long as it's not something which I found objectionable, like they're not like railroading me or taking away giving me just this illusion of choice. The Quantum Ogre, all the things that Samuel G hates. I don't like those either. Anything where they're forcing a story to happen because I'm just not into that period. As long as they're not doing that sort of thing, and maybe even if there's a teeny bit of railroading, and we're just enjoying the game and I'm there for the session, because I agree with the Swampert. Once you're along for the ride, just strap in. You're along for the ride, for that session at least, and then you can talk about it afterwards. That goes a long way. Just kind of letting go. I like to just get into the mindset of my character, and kind of thinking about like what would I do in that situation, and not really paying attention. The biggest thing to me, which I wish I'd said earlier in the video, was when I play, as a character, and when I play a character, I go for like what do I find interesting. I don't care what the story, what appears to be the story or what, what's going on. Whatever my character finds interesting, that's what I, decide. That's what I want to do. Maybe I have to advocate and argue with other members of the group in character, out of character, but hopefully in character. I find for me that once I start to get into that mode, and just follow my character's desires and whims and interests, then I can kind of let all that other stuff sort of evaporate, and I stop. I'm able to immerse myself. I'm able to let go. I'm able to live in the moment, I guess, with what it would be. I think Swampert said that at one point, and that helps quite a bit. And then once I get into there, once I'm able to really kind of step into that character's shoes, then it's a lot easier for me. And yeah, sure, can I see things coming sometimes, or kind of think, man, I would have done that differently for a second, sure. But I'm pretty sure, no matter what, if you've done this long enough, I can't roll the clackbach and play BX D&D for the first time anymore. That magical time where I'm chasing the dragon of those initial sessions and that initial feeling, or the first time I read a new game, I can't roll the clock back for that sort of stuff, because I have experience and I can't erase that. So yeah, I think it's a little bit more than just GM disease or syndrome. I think it's maybe like just experience syndrome. But you definitely, I agree that there's a certain mojo about being a game master, or even just thinking like a game master. Because I don't know, my experience has been maybe 50-50. Not really sure. But once you start thinking like a game master, that's something you can't really unthink. You learn this and you can't unlearn it. So yeah, the video went longer than I really wanted it to, but sorry. And that's my take. Have a good one.